Marcus Reed stood outside the gleaming glass doors of his own electronics store, wearing a janitor's uniform that smelled faintly of bleach and anonymity. The name tag pinned crookedly to his chest read Mike, a name he'd borrowed for the day, along with the mop and bucket that now served as his disguise. At 43 years old, Marcus had built Tech Hub from a single storefront in Detroit into a 27-location empire spanning the Midwest. Forbes had called him a visionary. Black Enterprise had featured him on their cover twice. His mother kept every article in a scrapbook she showed to anyone who'd stand still long enough, but right now, none of that mattered. What mattered was the email he'd received 3 days ago from an anonymous account. No name, no signature, just 5 sentences that had turned his stomach inside out. Your Riverside location is rotting from the inside. Your employees are suffering. Management is corrupt. People are crying in your store. Come see for yourself if you care. Marcus had stared at those words until they blurred. He'd built Tech Hub on principles his father had drilled into him during those long Detroit summers when they'd worked construction together. Treat people right, pay them fairly, and success will follow. His stores weren't just businesses. They were supposed to be communities, places where college kids could work their way through school, where single parents could find stable income, where people were valued. So here he stood, incognito, about to walk into his own store as a stranger. Before we go deeper into this story, take a second and hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and let us know where you're watching from. I'm curious to know how far these stories travel. The Riverside location was one of his newer stores, opened just 18 months ago in a neighborhood that had been overlooked by bigger retailers. Marcus had seen potential where others saw risk. The building was beautiful, all clean lines and natural light, with a community room in the back that hosted free tech workshops every Saturday. Or at least, that's what the report said. Marcus was about to find out if reality matched the paperwork. He pushed through the doors at 9:47 a.m. on a Tuesday, deliberately choosing a slower morning shift. The store hummed with the ambient sounds of a retail floor, smooth jazz playing softly overhead, the electronic ping of scanners, the murmur of customer conversations. Everything looked normal, perfect even. The displays were immaculate, the aisles were spotless, the lighting was warm and inviting. But Marcus had learned long ago that surfaces could lie. He gripped his mop handle and began his slow circuit of the store, eyes scanning everything while appearing to watch nothing. The janitor's invisibility cloak was remarkably effective. Customers walked past him without a glance. Employees barely registered his presence. He was furniture, background, exactly what he needed to be. Near the laptop section, he noticed a young employee, probably 19 or 20, helping an elderly customer navigate tablet options. The kid was patient, thorough, never once pushing the expensive models or rushing through the explanation. Good, that was the Tech Hub way. Marcus felt a small surge of pride. Then he turned the corner toward the customer service desk, and everything changed. A woman stood behind the counter, and even from 30 feet away, Marcus could see she was barely holding herself together. She was African-American, late 20s maybe, with her hair pulled back in a neat bun and a Tech Hub polo that looked freshly pressed. Her name tag identified her as Destiny Campbell, Customer Care Specialist. But it was her eyes that stopped Marcus cold. They were red-rimmed and glassy, and as he watched, she quickly swiped at her cheek with the back of her hand. She was crying, actively crying, while working. Marcus felt his grip tighten on the mop handle. He angled his path closer, pretending to clean an already spotless section of floor near the service desk. A customer approached, middle-aged white man with a laptop bag, and Destiny immediately straightened her shoulders, forcing brightness into her voice that didn't reach her eyes. Good morning. Welcome to Tech Hub. How can I help you today? The customer barely looked at her. Yeah, I need to return this wireless mouse. Doesn't work. Of course, sir. Do you have your receipt? Does it matter? Your return policy says 30 days, no questions asked. Destiny's professional smile never wavered, though Marcus saw her fingers tremble slightly as she took the mouse. Absolutely, sir. I just need the receipt to process the return in our system. It'll only take a moment. The customer huffed, digging through his bag with exaggerated annoyance. As Destiny waited, Marcus saw another tear slide down her cheek. She turned her face slightly, trying to hide it, but the fluorescent lights were unforgiving. Something was very, very wrong. Marcus moved to a display of phone cases, maintaining his janitor persona while keeping Destiny in his peripheral vision. Over the next 20 minutes, he watched her help 4 more customers. Each time she was professional, courteous, efficient. Each time she was also clearly fighting back tears. The disconnect was jarring, like watching someone drowning while pretending to swim. Where was her manager? Why was she working in this condition? Why hadn't someone sent her home, or at the very least, asked if she was okay? His questions were answered when a man emerged from the back offices. Regional Manager Kevin Patterson was 47 years old, according to the HR file Marcus had memorized before coming. He'd been with Tech Hub for 4 years. Promoted to regional manager 8 months ago, his performance reviews were exemplary. His stores consistently hit their numbers. On paper, he was exactly the kind of leader Marcus wanted running his locations. In person, he was something else entirely. Patterson was tall, white, with the kind of aggressive confidence that some men wore like cologne. His suit was expensive, too expensive for a retail manager's salary, Marcus noted automatically. His watch was a Rolex. His shoes were Italian leather. He strode across the sales floor like he owned it, which technically he didn't. Marcus owned it, but Patterson clearly didn't know there was a difference. "Destiny!" Patterson's voice cut across the space like a blade, not loud but sharp, commanding. Several customers glanced up. Destiny's shoulders went rigid. "Yes, Mr. Patterson." "My office, now." Destiny's face went pale. I have customers." "Did I ask about customers? I said now." The tone made Marcus's blood run cold. It was the voice of someone who knew they had power and enjoyed using it. The voice of someone who'd never been told no. Marcus had heard that tone before, in boardrooms and negotiations, usually right before he fired someone. Destiny cast a desperate glance at the growing line of customers, then at a young man working the phone section, probably hoping he'd cover for her. The kid studiously avoided eye contact, suddenly very interested in straightening a display that didn't need straightening. Fear. Marcus recognized it instantly. The employees were afraid of Patterson. Destiny followed Patterson toward the back offices, her steps small and reluctant. Marcus made a split-second decision. He grabbed his mop and bucket and headed toward the back corridor, the one reserved for employees. The janitor disguise was about to earn its keep. The back corridor of the store was a different world from the pristine sales floor. The walls here were plain white, marked with scuffs and the occasional handprint. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. 2 were flickering, creating an intermittent strobe effect that would have given Marcus a headache if he'd had to work under them every day. The break room door was propped open with a rubber wedge, revealing a space that was functional but barely. Mismatched chairs, a refrigerator that hummed too loudly, a microwave with a door that didn't quite close, a bulletin board overflowing with corporate memos and safety notices that no one probably read. Marcus positioned himself near a supply closet, methodically wringing out his mop in a bucket while keeping his ears trained on Patterson's office. The door was closed, but these corporate offices had thin walls, a cost-cutting measure Marcus now regretted. He'd approved the building plans himself, never imagining he'd one day be grateful for the lack of soundproofing. Patterson's voice carried clearly, even through the door. "Do you understand how embarrassing that was for me?" Marcus couldn't hear Destiny's response. Her voice was too quiet, too small. "I don't want to hear excuses." Patterson's words were clipped, aggressive. "When I give you a task, I expect it completed immediately. Not when you feel like it, not when it's convenient. Immediately. Do you understand the word immediately, Destiny?" More silence. Then Destiny's voice, barely audible. "Yes, Mr. Patterson, I'm sorry. I was with customers." "Were you with customers? Or were you standing there feeling sorry for yourself? Because from where I stood, it looked like you were having another one of your little emotional episodes?" Marcus felt his jaw clench so hard his molars ground together. Little emotional episodes. The dismissiveness in those words was staggering. "I'm dealing with a lot right now," Destiny said, her voice breaking. "My daughter, I don't pay you to bring your home life to work. Everyone has problems, Destiny. Everyone. The difference is that most people are professional enough to leave them at the door. If you can't handle the basic requirements of this job without falling apart, maybe you need to reevaluate whether this is the right position for you." Marcus had heard enough. He'd actually heard more than enough about 30 seconds ago, but his investigative instinct told him to wait, to gather the complete picture before acting. Now, though, his hands were shaking with barely controlled rage. He set down his mop carefully, more carefully than necessary, using the physical action to ground himself, and moved closer to the office door. "I need this job." Destiny's voice cracked completely. "Please, Mr. Patterson, I'll do better. I promise. I can't lose this job. My daughter has medical bills, and the insurance through Tech Hub is the only way I can—" "Then perhaps you should have thought about that before you decided to question my management decisions in front of other employees." "I didn't question you. I just asked why we stopped the Saturday workshops. The community really relied on those, and I thought maybe—" "You thought?" Patterson's laugh was cruel, sharp. "You're a cashier, Destiny. A customer service representative. You're not paid to think about community programs or management strategies. You're paid to scan items, smile at customers, and follow instructions. Those are your 3 job requirements. Can you handle those 3 simple things, or do I need to find someone who can? The silence that followed was crushing. Marcus could practically feel Destiny's humiliation through the walls, could picture her standing there, tears streaming down her face, dignity being systematically stripped away by a man who was supposed to be her leader. When Destiny finally spoke, her voice was hollow. I can handle them. Good. Now clean yourself up. You look unprofessional. And Destiny, this is your final warning. One more incident, one more emotional outburst, one more question about things that aren't your concern, and you're done. Are we clear? Yes, Mr. Patterson. Get back to work. Marcus heard footsteps approaching the door and quickly moved, pushing his mop across the floor with exaggerated purpose, the picture of a janitor absorbed in his mundane task. The door opened and Destiny emerged. Up close, the damage was even more evident. Her eyes were swollen, makeup smudged despite obvious attempts to fix it. Her hands trembled as she clutched a crumpled tissue. She didn't even glance at Marcus as she hurried past. He was invisible, just another piece of the working machinery, but Marcus saw her. He saw everything. Patterson appeared in the doorway, straightening his tie and checking his phone with the casual indifference of someone who'd just ordered lunch, not destroyed another human being's sense of worth. He glanced at Marcus, and for a moment their eyes met. You're the new janitor? Patterson's tone was dismissive, already looking back at his phone. Yes, sir, first day. Marcus kept his voice deliberately rough, uneducated sounding, playing the role. Well, this corridor is a mess, I expected. Spotless by noon. And the bathroom, did anyone show you where the bathroom is? Not yet, sir. Second door on your left, it's disgusting. I want it deep cleaned, top to bottom, and make sure you're using the proper chemicals. The last janitor we had didn't know the difference between a disinfectant and a floor cleaner. Idiot, nearly ruined the tile. Marcus nodded, subservient. I'll take care of it, sir. Patterson was already walking away, his attention back on his phone. As soon as he turned the corner, Marcus allowed himself a slow, controlled breath. The performance was exhausting, not physically but emotionally. Every instinct screamed at him to drop the act, to reveal who he was, to fire Patterson on the spot and walk him out of the building in front of everyone. But that would be satisfying for about 30 seconds. And then what? Patterson would be gone, sure, but Marcus still wouldn't understand the full scope of what was happening. One email had mentioned corruption, employees suffering, people crying. If this was systematic, if there were more victims, Marcus needed to see it all before he acted. So he picked up his mop and headed toward the bathroom Patterson had mentioned, playing his role while his mind raced with implications. The bathroom was, as Patterson had said, not in good condition, but it wasn't dirty in the way a janitor would define dirty. It was neglected. The soap dispensers were empty. The paper towel holder was broken. The mirror had a crack in the corner that someone had tried to cover with duct tape. The grout between the tiles was stained and crumbling. This wasn't the result of poor janitorial service. This was systemic neglect. The kind that happened when maintenance requests were ignored, when budgets allocated for facility upkeep were diverted elsewhere. Marcus pulled out his phone. He'd bought a prepaid burner just for this investigation and started taking photos. The empty soap dispensers, the broken fixtures, the crumbling infrastructure. Then he opened the memo app and began typing notes, documenting everything he'd witnessed: the time, Destiny's visible distress, Patterson's verbal abuse, the employee's obvious fear, the facility neglect. He was so absorbed in his documentation that he almost missed the voices in the corridor. Can't keep doing this. The speaker was male, young, urgent. We don't have a choice, Jake. You know what happens to people who complain. Marcus froze, phone still in hand. He moved quietly to the bathroom door, leaving it open just a crack to listen. Destiny is falling apart. Did you see her face today? She's going to have a breakdown. Of course I saw her face. We all saw her face. But what are we supposed to do? The last person who went to HR about Patterson got fired 2 weeks later for performance issues. Remember Tyrell? Jake's voice dropped. That was retaliation. Everyone knows it. Knowing it and proving it are 2 different things. Patterson's smart. He documents everything, creates a paper trail. By the time HR investigates, it looks legitimate. This isn't right, Maria. Destiny's daughter has leukemia. Did you know that? She's 6 years old. She's going through chemotherapy. And Patterson just threatened to fire her for being emotional. What kind of monster does that? Maria's voice was tired, resigned. The kind that hits his numbers every quarter, the kind that corporate loves. Marcus felt his chest tighten. Destiny's daughter had leukemia. That changed everything. Not that Patterson's behavior had been acceptable before, but this added a layer of cruelty that made Marcus physically ill. He'd built Tech Hub specifically to be the kind of company that supported employees through hardships like this. that offered generous leave policies and comprehensive insurance and manager training focused on compassion and leadership. Apparently, none of that had made it to Riverside. Jake spoke again, his voice breaking slightly. I tried to help her with that return earlier, but Patterson was watching. You know how he gets when he thinks we're wasting time helping each other instead of customers. Jake, you've got to be careful. You're new. You can't afford to get on his bad side. I'm already on his bad side. You know why? Because I'm dating Marcus. Patterson's been making comments about it for weeks. Subtle remarks about professionalism and workplace relationships and whether we're distracted. Never direct enough to file a complaint about, but constant. Drip, drip, drip. Marcus's breath caught. Marcus, the employee, was dating someone named Marcus. It took him a second to process that this wasn't about him, different Marcus, but the mention of discrimination made his blood pressure spike even higher. That's harassment, Maria said quietly. It's everything and nothing. That's how Patterson operates. He never quite crosses the line enough for HR to act, but he makes your life miserable. Look at Destiny. He hasn't technically violated any policies. He just assigns her the worst shifts, denies her requests for time off, criticizes her constantly, creates an impossible standard that she can never meet. Then, when she finally breaks down from the stress, he uses that as evidence that she's unstable and unprofessional. It's psychological warfare. That's exactly what it is. Their footsteps retreated, voices fading as they moved away. Marcus stayed in the bathroom, hand pressed against the cool tile wall, trying to process what he'd just heard. This wasn't just one manager having a bad day or one employee getting mistreated. This was systematic, calculated abuse. Patterson had created a culture of fear so pervasive that employees were afraid to help each other, afraid to complain, afraid to be human. And somehow this had been happening in Marcus's store, under Marcus's name, without him knowing. The responsibility of that hit him like a physical blow. He'd been so focused on expansion, on growth, on opening new locations and hitting financial targets, that he'd lost sight of the individual stores, the individual people. He'd trusted his regional managers to maintain the culture he'd built, and at least one of them had betrayed that trust completely. How many others were like Patterson? How many other locations had similar problems? Marcus forced himself to take slow, deep breaths. He couldn't spiral into that larger question right now. Right now, he needed to focus on Riverside, on gathering evidence, on understanding the full scope before he acted. He finished cleaning the bathroom, actually cleaned it properly because even undercover, he couldn't stand to leave a job half done, and then returned to the sales floor. It was nearly noon now and the store was getting busier. Lunch hour traffic brought a different crowd, office workers on break, parents with kids, contractors looking for specific tools and equipment. Destiny was still at the customer service desk. She'd clearly attempted to compose herself, fresh makeup, forced smile, but her body language screamed exhaustion. She moved through the motions of her job with mechanical precision, no wasted movement, no personality, just function. Marcus had seen soldiers with PTSD move like that, people who'd learned to shut down their emotions just to survive. Over the next 2 hours, Marcus watched, really watched, and the patterns became impossible to ignore. Patterson circulated through the store like a shark, and employees scattered in his wake. Not obviously, they were too well trained for that, but subtly. A sales associate would suddenly become very interested in straightening a display. A cashier would focus intently on their register. Everyone found a reason to look busy, to be invisible whenever Patterson approached, except for a few employees, the ones who were white, male, and what Marcus would categorize as, yes, men. Patterson laughed with them, clapped them on the back, had casual conversations about sports and weekend plans. With everyone else, particularly the women, particularly the employees of color, his demeanor was cold, critical, demanding. Marcus documented it all. Times, observations, specific interactions. His phone's memo app was filling up with evidence. Around 2 p.m. he witnessed another incident that made his hands shake with rage. An elderly black woman approached the service desk with a complicated return, a laptop she'd purchased 3 weeks ago that had developed a hardware fault. She had all her paperwork, was polite and patient, clearly knew her rights as a consumer. Destiny was processing the return, following protocol exactly when Patterson materialized at her elbow. Is there a problem here? His tone implied that if there was a problem, Destiny had created it. No problem, Mr. Patterson. Just processing a return for Mrs. Johnson. The laptop has a hardware defect. I'll handle this. Patterson's smile at Mrs. Johnson was tight, professional, but his eyes were calculating. Mrs. Johnson, I see you've had this laptop for 3 weeks. That's a significant amount of time. Are you sure this is a hardware defect and not user error? Mrs. Johnson stiffened. Young man, I've been using computers since before you were born. I know the difference between a hardware defect and user error. The screen went black in the middle of use. and it won't turn back on. The charging port sparks when I plug it in. That's a defect. The charging port sparks? Patterson's eyebrows rose, theatrical. That's a serious claim. Did you use the original charger, or did you purchase a third-party accessory? Because our return policy clearly states, I used the original charger that came with the laptop, everything that came with the laptop. And your policy states that defective items can be returned within 30 days, which it has been. Patterson's smile never wavered, but Marcus could see the calculation behind it. Of course, however, I'll need to have our tech team inspect the laptop to verify the defect before I can authorize a full refund. That process usually takes 7 to 10 business days. That's not what your website says. Your website says defective returns are processed immediately. The website refers to obviously defective items. In cases where the defect is ambiguous or might be related to user error, we need to verify. There's nothing ambiguous about a port that sparks when you plug it in. That's a fire hazard. That's a safety issue. Marcus was moving before he consciously decided to. He set down his mop and approached the counter, still in character, but unable to stay silent. If you were watching this happen right in front of you, knowing what you now know about Destiny and what she's going through, what would you do? Would you speak up, or would you stay silent to protect yourself? Share your thoughts in the comments. Excuse me, sir? Marcus kept his voice deferential, humble, the perfect undercover janitor. I don't mean to interrupt, but I was cleaning near the tech department earlier, and I overheard them talking about a recall on that laptop model. Something about the charging ports being defective. Might want to check with them before running the full inspection process. It was a complete fabrication, but Marcus delivered it with such genuine helpfulness that Patterson couldn't immediately dismiss it. Mrs. Johnson's eyes lit up with vindication. Patterson's jaw tightened microscopically. Thank you for the input, Patterson said through a smile that didn't reach his eyes. But I'm capable of handling customer service matters without assistance from the janitorial staff. Of course, sir. Just trying to help save everyone some time. Marcus bobbed his head apologetically and shuffled away, but not before he saw the grateful look Mrs. Johnson shot him. He also saw the absolute fury in Patterson's eyes. Not at Marcus. Patterson still had no idea who he really was, but at being corrected, even obliquely, in front of a customer and an employee. Marcus had just painted a target on his janitor persona's back, which was fine. He wanted to see what Patterson did when he felt challenged. What Patterson did was predictable and petty, and exactly the kind of power play Marcus had expected. 15 minutes after the incident with Mrs. Johnson, Patterson found Marcus in the home theater section, where he was dusting already clean display shelves. Mike! Patterson's voice was cold. Oh, word! Marcus straightened, playing the nervous new employee perfectly. Yes, sir? That little stunt you pulled at the customer service desk was completely inappropriate. You're a janitor. Your job is to clean, not to involve yourself in customer interactions or managerial decisions. Do you understand that? I'm sorry, sir. I was just trying to help. I thought if there was a recall. There is no recall. You spread misinformation in front of a customer. That's a terminable offense. Marcus let his eyes widen. Sir, I really am sorry. It won't happen again. I need this job. Please. The desperation in his voice was partially manufactured, but there was real emotion underneath it. Rage at having to debase himself like this, fury at watching Patterson get satisfaction from the power play, disgust at the thought of how many real employees had stood in this exact position, genuinely afraid for their livelihoods. Patterson let the silence stretch out, savoring his authority. I'm going to give you one more chance. One. But you're now on probation. I'll be watching you very closely. Any more mistakes, any more overstepping, and you're out. Clear? Crystal clear, sir. Thank you, sir. Patterson walked away, already pulling out his phone, probably to document this probationary discussion for Marcus's fictional employee file. Marcus had to admit a sophisticated system of control, document everything, create paper trails, make it all look legitimate. If Marcus had been a real janitor and tried to fight back, Patterson could pull out a file full of performance issues and policy violations and make it look justified. How many people had he driven out this way? How many had left broken, convinced they were the problem? Marcus returned to his cleaning, but his mind was racing. He'd seen enough to take action, more than enough, but something held him back. Call it instinct, call it years of business experience, but Marcus felt like he was still missing something. The anonymous email had mentioned corruption, not just abuse. So far, he'd witnessed awful management and toxic culture, but not corruption in the financial sense. Then, at 3:30 p.m., he found it. Marcus was cleaning near Patterson's office, the door left carelessly ajar while Patterson was on the sales floor when he noticed papers scattered across the desk. His investigative instincts prickled. He glanced around, confirmed he was alone in the corridor, and slipped inside. The papers were inventory reports, quarterly summaries, and they didn't match. Marcus had built Tech Hub from the ground up. He knew inventory systems intimately. What he was looking at was a carefully constructed double book system. The official reports that went to corporate showed one set of numbers, healthy margins, appropriate shrinkage rates, expected losses. But these papers, clearly marked manager copy, internal use only, showed something different. Patterson was cooking the books. The method was clever, Marcus had to admit grudgingly. High-value items were being marked as damaged or shoplifted in the official system, but the handwritten notes on these papers suggested they were actually being diverted somewhere else. Laptops, tablets, high-end phones, thousands of dollars of inventory systematically siphoned off over months. Marcus pulled out his phone and started photographing everything, moving quickly but carefully, making sure to capture every page. His hands were remarkably steady despite the adrenaline flooding his system. This was it. This was the corruption the email had mentioned. Patterson wasn't just an abusive manager. He was also a thief, stealing from Marcus's company while terrorizing the employees who might notice. The question was, who else was involved? This kind of operation usually required help. Someone in the warehouse, someone in accounting, maybe someone in corporate. Marcus needed to. "What the hell are you doing in my office?" Marcus's blood turned to ice. He'd been so focused on the documents that he'd missed Patterson's approach. Rookie mistake. Unforgivable for someone who'd spent 20 years navigating cutthroat business environments. He turned slowly, phone still in hand, photos still on the screen. Patterson stood in the doorway, and for a moment, just a moment, Marcus saw. Genuine fear flickered across the man's face, then it was gone, replaced by rage. "I asked you a question, Mike. What are you doing in my office?" Marcus made a split-second decision. He could continue the charade, play the confused janitor who wandered into the wrong room, but the phone in his hand made that implausible. Patterson had already seen the screen. The game was up. So Marcus straightened to his full height, let his posture shift from subservient to authoritative, and met Patterson's eyes directly. "Actually, my name isn't Mike. It's Marcus Reed. And this is my company." The transformation was remarkable. Patterson went from angry to confused to horrified in the space of 3 seconds. His face drained of color, his mouth opened and closed without sound. His hand gripped the doorframe like it was the only thing keeping him upright. "Mr. Reed, I can explain." "Can you?" Marcus's voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of absolute authority. "Can you explain why you've been systematically abusing your employees? Can you explain why a woman whose 6-year-old daughter has leukemia was crying at her register because you threatened her job? Can you explain these?" He held up his phone, showing the photos of the inventory reports. Patterson's expression cycled through several options: denial, anger, bargaining, before settling on something that made Marcus's skin crawl: calculation. Even caught red-handed, Patterson was trying to figure out an angle, a way to spin this, a path to survival. "Mr. Reed, I think there's been a misunderstanding. The inventory system is complex, and sometimes the reports—" "Don't," Marcus's voice could have cut glass. "Don't insult my intelligence. I built this company. I know every system, every process, every legitimate variance in inventory management. What you've been doing is theft. Not a misunderstanding, not a complex system. Theft. If you'll just let me—" "I'm not finished." Marcus took a step forward, and Patterson actually backed up. "Good. For the last 6 hours, I've watched you terrorize your employees. I've heard you verbally abuse a woman who's dealing with her child's cancer treatment. I've seen you create a culture where people are afraid to help each other, afraid to speak up, afraid to be human. You've taken everything I built Tech Hub to be and corrupted it into something unrecognizable." Patterson's face was a mask of panic now, all pretense of control gone. "Please, Mr. Reed, I can fix this. Just give me a chance to—" "You had your chance. You had 18 months. This is what you chose to do with it." Marcus pulled out his real phone, his actual CEO phone, not the burner he'd been using for photos, and made a call. It was answered on the first ring. "Sarah, Marcus Reed, I need security and HR at the Riverside location immediately. Also, contact our legal team and the local police. We have a situation." Patterson made a sound like a wounded animal. "You can't do this. I have rights. I have documentation. I can fight this." "You absolutely can try." Marcus's smile was cold. "Please do. I'd love to see you explain these inventory discrepancies to a judge. I'd especially love to see you try to justify your treatment of employees in a courtroom. Did you know that every conversation you've had in this store is recorded? That's company policy, something I implemented after a workplace harassment lawsuit 5 years ago. Every word you said to Destiny today, every threat you made, it's all documented. That was when Patterson truly understood he was finished. His legs seemed to give out, and he slumped against the doorframe. I'm ruined. Yes, Marcus said simply. You are. Security arrived within 20 minutes, the benefit of having a corporate office only 15 minutes away. Sarah Chen, TechHub's Director of Human Resources, came with them, along with 2 members of the legal team and a representative from corporate. Security. Marcus had worked with Sarah for 12 years. She was one of his first hires, someone he trusted implicitly. Her face when she saw him in a janitor's uniform was priceless. Marcus, what in the world? Long story. Right now I need you to escort Mr. Patterson to a private room and get his full statement on everything. The inventory, irregularities, his management practices, everything. Our lawyers will handle the preliminary documentation before we turn this over to the police. Sarah's expression went from confused to professional in an instant. She'd seen corporate crises before. Understood. What about the employees? I'll handle them. But Sarah, I need you to arrange immediate support. Counseling services if employees want them, and I want a full audit of Patterson's personnel files, every disciplinary action he's taken, every performance review he's written, every termination he's authorized. I want to know if there are patterns of discrimination or retaliation. I'll have it by tomorrow morning. As Sarah and security escorted a shell-shocked Patterson away, Marcus turned to face the real challenge, talking to the employees. News of the CEO's presence had spread through the store like wildfire. People were congregating near the back corridor, voices hushed, expressions ranging from confused to terrified. Marcus found Destiny at her register, frozen in place, mascara streaking down her cheeks again. When she saw him approaching, she looked like she might bolt. Destiny Campbell, Marcus kept his voice gentle. I'm so sorry, Mr. Reed. Whatever Mr. Patterson said about me, I can explain. I've been trying so hard. My daughter, she's sick, and I know I've been emotional, but I promise I'll do better. Please don't fire me. I need this job. I need the insurance. Please. The words tumbled out in a desperate rush, and Marcus felt his heart crack. This was what Patterson had done. He'd broken this woman's spirit so thoroughly that, even with her abuser being escorted out in handcuffs, she assumed she was the one in trouble. Destiny, stop. You're not being fired. You're not in trouble. In fact, I need to apologize to you. That brought her up short. What? I'm the CEO of this company. Everything that happens in these stores is ultimately my responsibility, and I failed you. I failed to create systems that would catch what Patterson was doing. I failed to maintain a culture where employees felt safe reporting abuse. I failed to notice that one of my locations had become a toxic environment. That's on me, and I'm sorry. Destiny stared at him like he was speaking a foreign language. You're apologizing to me? I am, and I want you to know that Patterson is done. He will never work for TechHub again, and I'm going to make sure he faces criminal charges for what he's stolen. But beyond that, I need to understand what's been happening here. I need to make this right, and I can't do that without help from the people who've been living through it. Before we continue, I want to hear from you. If you've ever worked in an environment where you felt powerless or unseen, or if Destiny's situation resonates with you in any way, share your thoughts below. I read every single comment. Over the next 3 hours, Marcus conducted what he later called the most important meeting of his career. He gathered every employee, all 15 people working that day, in the back training room. He ordered food, brought in chairs, and created as comfortable an environment as possible. Then he asked them to tell their stories, and they did. Jake talked about the constant homophobic comments, always phrased as jokes or concerns about professionalism, never quite actionable but always present. Maria described being passed over for promotion 3 times in favor of less qualified male employees. An older employee named Ron explained how Patterson had changed his schedule to the worst shifts after Ron had questioned an inventory discrepancy. A young woman named Aisha revealed that Patterson had denied her time off to attend her sister's wedding, then written her up for attitude problems when she'd tried to explain why it was important. The stories went on and on and on. Each one was a small cruelty, a tiny abuse of power, a minor betrayal of trust. Individually, they might have been dismissed as personality conflicts or management-style differences. Together, they painted a picture of systematic, intentional toxicity. But the worst story came from Destiny. My daughter Amara was diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia 8 months ago, she said, her voice steady now, though tears still flowed freely. She's 6. She loves unicorns and hot chocolate and the color purple, and she's the strongest person I've ever met. Destiny pulled out her phone and showed Marcus a photo. A beautiful little girl with a bright smile and no hair, wearing a hospital gown decorated with rainbows. When Amara got sick, I had to take time off for her initial treatments. Tech Hub's leave policy is generous. I qualified for 12 weeks of family medical leave. But Patterson, he made it clear that taking that leave would impact my standing with the company. He suggested I think carefully about whether I really needed to be at every appointment. He implied that other people had managed to balance work and family without inconveniencing the team. Marcus felt physically sick. So I came back after 4 weeks instead of 12. I worked split shifts so I could take Amara to chemo in the mornings and be here in the afternoons. I used all my vacation days, all my sick days, everything just to cover the hours I needed to be at the hospital. And Patterson still acted like I was being unreasonable. He put me on a performance improvement plan because my emotional state was affecting customer interactions. He documented every time I seemed tired or distracted. He built a case to fire me, slowly, methodically, while my daughter was fighting for her life. Destiny, Marcus said quietly. Why didn't you call corporate HR? We have protections against this kind of retaliation. I tried. Her laugh was bitter. I called 3 times. Each time they said they'd investigate. Each time Patterson was informed of the complaint. Each time he found new ways to make my life harder while staying just inside the rules. The last HR representative I spoke to suggested that maybe I needed to develop thicker skin and that not all management styles work for everyone. The implication was clear. This was my problem, not Patterson's. Marcus made a note to himself, audit the entire HR complaint process. If employees were calling for help and being dismissed, the problem was bigger than Patterson. How is Amara now? He asked. Destiny's face lit up slightly. She's in remission. The doctors are cautiously optimistic. She's starting to get her energy back. She even went to school for 3 hours last week, which was huge. That's wonderful. It is, but Mr. Reed, I have to be honest with you, I was planning to quit. Today, after my shift. I couldn't do this anymore. The stress of this job was affecting my health, which meant it was affecting my ability to care for Amara. I was going to walk away from the insurance, from the income, everything, because staying here was destroying me. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. He'd almost lost a good employee. More than that, a good person going through an unimaginable crisis because of one toxic manager's abuse of power. You're not quitting, Marcus said firmly, and here's what's going to happen. First, you're getting 6 weeks of paid leave, effective immediately, to spend time with Amara, non-negotiable. Second, when you return, you'll report directly to the new store manager, whoever that is, and you'll help me choose them. Third, I'm personally reviewing your compensation package to make sure you're being paid fairly for your experience and dedication. And fourth, I'm setting up a meeting between you and our Family Support Services coordinator because we have resources available that you should have been told about months ago. Childcare assistance, flexible scheduling options, additional health advocacy support for families dealing with serious illness. Destiny was crying again, but these were different tears. You're really doing all that? I'm really doing all that. And Destiny, I'm also setting up a scholarship fund in Amara's name for children of Tech Hub employees facing medical crises. Because what happened to you shouldn't happen to anyone, ever. And I want to make sure we have systems in place to support families going through these situations. The room was silent, then Jake started clapping. Maria joined him. Within seconds, all 15 employees were applauding, some with tears in their eyes. Marcus held up a hand. Don't thank me. Yet, I have a lot of work to do to earn back your trust. This store has been failing you for 18 months, and that stops today. But I need your help. I need you to tell me what you need. What would make Tech Hub the kind of place you're actually proud to work? Over the next 2 weeks, Marcus practically lived at the Riverside location. He brought in Sarah and her entire HR team. They conducted private interviews with every employee, current and former. They reviewed years of documentation. They analyzed hiring patterns, promotion decisions, disciplinary actions, and terminations. The audit revealed that Patterson's abuse had been even more systematic than Marcus initially realized. Over 18 months, he'd fired or forced out 12 employees, 10 of whom were women or people of color. Denied promotion to 7 qualified candidates while promoting less experienced employees who fit his preferred demographic, systematically reduced hours for employees who questioned his decisions, created a hostile work environment that led to a 65% turnover rate, 3 times higher than any other Tech Hub location, stolen approximately $127,000 worth of inventory through his fraudulent reporting scheme. The financial theft was almost less offensive than the human cost. Patterson had destroyed careers, damaged mental health, cost families their income and insurance, and created trauma that would take years to heal. But Marcus was determined to start the healing process immediately. His first major action was bringing in a professional mediation and workplace culture specialist. Dr. Jennifer Martinez had helped numerous companies recover from toxic leadership situations. She spent a week at Riverside, conducting group sessions and individual counseling, helping employees process their experiences and begin rebuilding trust. His second action was hiring a new store manager, not from outside the company, but from within. Maria, the employee who'd been passed over 3 times for promotion, was offered the position. She accepted with tears in her eyes. "I almost left," she admitted to Marcus during their first one-on-one meeting. "6 months ago I had a job offer from Best Buy, better title, better pay. But I believed in what Tech Hub was supposed to be. I believed in the values you talked about in all those employee videos. I just couldn't see them anymore in this store." "You're going to help me bring them back," Marcus said, and she did. Maria had ideas, lots of them. Implement regular anonymous feedback surveys, create a direct hotline to corporate for concerns that bypass regional management, reinstate the Saturday community workshops that Patterson had cancelled, establish a peer recognition program, rotate managers between locations to prevent any one person from accumulating too much unchecked power. Marcus approved every proposal and asked for more. But his most important action was personal. Every morning for 2 weeks, Marcus arrived at Riverside at opening time and spent the entire day on the floor. Not managing, not supervising, working. He helped customers, stocked shelves, processed returns, cleaned bathrooms, did whatever was needed. He wanted every employee to see him, to know he was present, to understand that he genuinely cared about the day-to-day reality of working in his stores. He also wanted to hear their stories, not just about Patterson, but about their lives. He learned that Jake was putting himself through nursing school, that Ron had worked retail for 40 years and could tell you the history of consumer electronics from the first portable radios to modern smartphones, that Aisha was a talented artist who designed all the employee birthday cards, that the quiet kid who stocked shelves, Tommy, was teaching himself programming and had already built 3 mobile apps. These were remarkable people with rich lives beyond their name tags, and Patterson had reduced them to cogs in a machine, to problems to be managed, to obstacles to his theft and control. Think about this for a moment. When Marcus spent 2 weeks on the floor working alongside his employees, it showed real leadership. Before we go deeper, I'd love to hear your point of view. What part of Marcus's response hit you the hardest? Share your thoughts in the comments. On the 15th day of his time at Riverside, something happened that Marcus would remember for the rest of his life. He was at the customer service desk. Destiny had returned from her leave the day before, glowing with stories about Amara's progress when a family walked in. Mother, father, and a little girl wearing a purple dress and a pink headscarf covering her bald head. Destiny's face transformed. "Amara, baby, what are you doing here?" The little girl ran to her mother, and Destiny swept her up in a fierce hug. The child's father approached the counter, smiling. "She insisted on coming to see where Mommy works. We tried to convince her to wait until the weekend, but I wanted to see the store," Amara announced with 6-year-old enthusiasm. "Mommy says it's much better now. She says she doesn't cry anymore when she comes to work." Destiny's eyes met Marcus's over her daughter's head, and the gratitude there was overwhelming. "Amara," Destiny said gently, "I want you to meet someone. This is Mr. Reed. He's the boss of the whole company." Amara turned to examine Marcus with the serious intensity only children can muster. Then she smiled, revealing 2 missing front teeth. "Are you the one who made my mommy happy again?" Marcus crouched down to her level. "I'm trying, but really, your mommy is the one who's been brave. Both of you have been so brave." "I have leukemia," Amara said matter-of-factly, "but I'm beating it. The doctors say I'm very strong." "I can see that. Your mom told me you love unicorns." Amara's eyes widened. "I love unicorns. They're magical and beautiful, and they can fly. Well, I happen to know that we're getting a shipment of unicorn merchandise next week. Tablet cases, phone chargers, even some light-up speakers. Would you like to help me pick out which ones the store should carry?" "Really?" Amara bounced with excitement, then winced slightly and stopped. Destiny steadied her, concern flickering across her face. "Really?" Marcus confirmed. "I think every Tech Hub store should have a kid consultant, someone who can tell us what actual young people want instead of what adults think they want. Would you be interested in the job? Can I, Mommy, can I?" Destiny was crying again, but she was smiling through the tears. "If Mr. Reed is offering, then yes, sweetheart, you can." Marcus spent the next 20 minutes showing Amara around the store, explaining products in simple terms, asking her opinion on displays and signage. She had surprisingly good insights. The phone case display was too high for kids to see. The gaming section needed more. Comfortable chairs for people to test games. The tablet demo units should have more than just preloaded apps because how can you tell if you like something if you can't really use it? When Amara's father finally said they needed to leave, she tired easily, he explained quietly. The little girl hugged Marcus with unself-conscious affection. "Thank you for making my mommy smile," she whispered. Marcus found himself blinking back tears as he watched them leave. A little girl in a purple dress and pink headscarf holding her mother's hand, skipping slightly despite her fatigue, confident in her mother's love and her own strength. That was what Patterson had been willing to destroy for $127,000 and unchecked power. That was what he'd almost taken from the world. That evening, Marcus called an emergency meeting with his entire executive team. All the regional managers, all the department heads, everyone who had any authority over employees in his company. "We failed," he told them bluntly. "We let a toxic manager abuse his power for 18 months while good people suffered. We had complaint systems that didn't work, oversight that didn't oversee, and values that existed on paper, but not in practice. That ends now." He unveiled a comprehensive reform plan. Immediate actions. Every regional manager would undergo mandatory retraining on employee rights, anti-discrimination policies, and psychological safety. A new anonymous reporting system would be implemented, managed by an external third party to prevent retaliation. Quarterly culture audits would be conducted at every location by independent consultants. Any manager with a pattern of complaints would be immediately placed on administrative review. Structural changes. Regional managers would rotate between territories every 2 years to prevent entrenchment. Store managers would be evaluated not just on financial metrics, but on employee satisfaction scores, turnover rates, and cultural health indicators. Employees would have direct access to a corporate ombudsman who could investigate concerns without going through their management chain. Cultural reinforcement, monthly all-hands meetings where Marcus would personally address employees from different locations via video. An employee advisory board composed of frontline workers from various stores who would have direct input on company policies. Dramatically expanded mental health and family support services, a whistleblower protection policy with financial penalties for any proven retaliation. "This will be expensive," Marcus's CFO pointed out. "We're talking millions in additional overhead." "I don't care," Marcus said flatly. "We're profitable enough to absorb it, and if we're not, then we'll make different choices about expansion or executive compensation or whatever else is necessary, because I will not run a company where someone like Destiny has to choose between her daughter's cancer treatment and keeping her job. I will not run a company where employees are afraid to help each other. Those are not negotiable values. They're the foundation of everything we do." The room was silent. Then, one by one, his leadership team nodded. Kevin Patterson's case moved through the legal system with surprising speed. The evidence was overwhelming. Marcus's photos, the testimonies of a dozen employees, the forensic accounting that traced stolen inventory to a network of resellers Patterson had established. His attorney tried to negotiate a plea deal, but Marcus refused to authorize it. "He needs to face every consequence," Marcus told his legal team, "not as revenge, but as a message. To him, to anyone else who might think they can get away with this kind of behavior, and to the employees who deserve to see that justice actually happens." Patterson was ultimately convicted on multiple counts of theft, fraud, and embezzlement. He received a 4-year prison sentence and was ordered to pay full restitution, not just to Tech Hub, but to the employees whose lives he'd damaged. The judge's statement at sentencing was scathing. "Mr. Patterson, you were given a position of trust and authority. You used that position not to serve others, but to serve yourself. You stole money, yes, but you also stole dignity, security, and peace of mind from people who worked hard and deserved better. You created a culture of fear in an environment that should have been characterized by mutual respect and support. You exploited your employees' vulnerability for your own gain. The harm you've caused extends far beyond financial damages and will affect your victims for years to come." Destiny attended the sentencing. Marcus offered to accompany her, but she said she needed to go alone. When she returned to the store afterward, her eyes were red, but her spine was straight. "Did it feel like justice?" Marcus asked gently. "It felt like closure," Destiny replied, "or at least the beginning of closure. I think justice is still something we're building." She was right. The sentencing was one day. The real work of rebuilding trust, culture, and safety was ongoing. 6 months after the Riverside incident, Marcus conducted a company-wide survey. The results were sobering but illuminating. 23% of Tech Hub employees had experienced some form of workplace harassment or discrimination in the past year. 31% didn't feel comfortable reporting concerns to their immediate supervisors. 45% weren't aware of all the support services and resources available to them. But 78% felt that the company was moving in a positive direction with the new policies. There was so much more work to do. Marcus threw himself into it with the same intensity he'd brought to building Tech Hub in the first place. He visited every location personally, all 27 stores, spending at least 3 days at each one. He met with employees, asked questions, listened to concerns, made changes on the spot when he could, and took notes when he couldn't. He discovered 2 more managers with problematic patterns, though nothing as severe as Patterson. One was encouraged to take early retirement, the other was demoted and required to undergo extensive training before being considered for any supervisory role again. He also discovered amazing people doing extraordinary things: store managers who'd created support networks for employees facing hardships, sales associates who'd organized volunteer programs in their communities, cashiers who'd become mentors for younger employees. All of this had been happening despite the corporate structure, not because of it. Marcus made it his mission to celebrate and amplify these positive examples. He created a monthly spotlight program showcasing employees who exemplified Tech Hub's values. He established innovation grants that allowed store teams to pilot new programs or community initiatives. He increased profit sharing and employee ownership stakes, believing that if people were invested in the company's success, they'd be more empowered to shape it. The Riverside store became a model for the entire chain. Under Maria's leadership, it transformed from having the worst employee satisfaction scores in the company to having the best. Turnover dropped to just 12%, well below industry average. Customer satisfaction scores soared. The Saturday community workshops were reinstated and expanded, becoming so popular that Maria had to add additional sessions, and the store flourished financially too. Turns out when employees feel valued and supported, they provide better customer service, work more efficiently, and generate more sales. Riverside's revenue increased by 34% in the first year after Patterson's departure. But perhaps the most meaningful change was cultural. Employees at Riverside began speaking openly about their lives, their challenges, their aspirations. They helped each other without fear of retribution. They questioned decisions and offered suggestions without worrying about retaliation. They created a genuine community. Other stores noticed. They wanted what Riverside had, and Marcus made sure they got it. Before we wrap up this story, I want to hear from you. Have you ever witnessed or experienced a situation where speaking up changed everything? Or maybe you've seen real leadership in action, like Marcus showed? Drop your thoughts below. I really do read every single comment, and your perspectives matter. 1 year after Marcus walked into his own store disguised as a janitor, he returned to Riverside for a special celebration. Destiny had been promoted to assistant manager, a role she'd been ready for years ago but had been denied by Patterson. Amara's leukemia remained in remission, and she'd recently finished her last round of preventive treatment. The store was hosting a Survivors' Day event, showcasing local cancer survivors and raising funds for childhood cancer research. Marcus arrived early without fanfare and helped set up tables and chairs. He was wearing a Tech Hub polo this time, his name tag clearly identifying him as the CEO, but the spirit was the same as that first day. Present, engaged, willing to do whatever was needed. Amara was there, her hair growing back in soft curls, wearing a t-shirt that said Survivor in sparkly letters. When she saw Marcus, she ran over and hugged his legs. "Mr. Reed, I've been helping Mommy plan this event. We're going to raise so much money." "I have no doubt you will. I also heard you've been helping with the unicorn merchandise section." "I have, and guess what? We sold more unicorn stuff than any other store in the whole company. Mommy showed me the charts." "That's because you're an excellent consultant." "I know." Her confidence was absolute, untouched by false modesty. Marcus loved it. As the event began, Marcus found himself standing next to Destiny, watching Amara excitedly explain the event to arriving guests. "Thank you," Destiny said quietly. "For everything, for listening, for caring, for making this a place where I can be both a good employee and a good mother without having to choose." "You shouldn't have had to thank me for basic human decency," Marcus replied. "That should be the default. Maybe, but in a lot of places it's not. And I want you to know that what you did here, it rippled out. I have friends who work retail in other companies, and when they complain about their jobs, I tell them about Tech Hub, about what's possible when leadership actually gives a damn. 3 of my friends have applied to work here because of the changes you made." Marcus felt a lump in his throat. "That's what I hoped for. Not just fixing one store, but creating a model that proves it's possible to be profitable and humane, to prioritize people and performance." You're doing it. It's working. The event was a massive success. They raised over $15,000 for childhood cancer. Research, local news covered it. The store's social media posts about the event went viral, generating positive publicity for Tech Hub and inspiring other stores to create their own community events. But, more importantly, people felt good. Employees were proud of their workplace. Customers felt connected to a business that clearly cared about more than just profit. Survivors shared their stories in a space that honored their experiences. It was everything Marcus had envisioned when he first started Tech Hub, and everything he'd been afraid he'd lost. That evening, after the event ended and the store closed, Marcus gathered the Riverside team for a private moment. All 20 employees, the entire current staff, squeezed into the back training room. "I want to tell you something," Marcus began. "A year ago, I received an anonymous email that changed everything. It told me this store was rotting from the inside, that employees were suffering, that management was corrupt. I don't know who sent it. I probably never will. But whoever you are, if you're in this room, thank you. You saved this store. You saved people's livelihoods and well-being. You saved Tech Hub from becoming something I never wanted it to be." He paused, looking around at their faces. "Each of you has helped rebuild this place. You could have left, many of you considered it, but you stayed, you fought, you created something better. This store isn't successful because of policies or procedures or corporate mandates. It's successful because of you, your courage, your compassion, your commitment to each other." Maria raised her hand with a slight smile. "Marcus, I have a confession. I sent the email." The room went silent. Everyone turned to look at her. "I was terrified," Maria continued. "I didn't know if you'd believe it or if you'd even read it. I sent it from a burner email account at the library because I was afraid Patterson would find out somehow, but I couldn't watch what was happening anymore. I couldn't watch destiny suffer. Couldn't watch good people get driven out. Couldn't watch Patterson destroy everything while counting his stolen money. So I took a chance on you. On the Marcus Reed I'd heard about in employee orientations and company meetings. I hoped that person was real and not just corporate PR." Marcus felt his eyes sting. "I'm so glad you did, and I'm sorry you had to. Don't be sorry. Be the leader you've been this past year. Keep showing up. Keep listening. Keep giving a damn. That's all any of us want. I can do that." And he did. 3 years after Marcus Reed walked into his store disguised as a janitor, Tech Hub had transformed into something remarkable. The company had expanded to 41 locations, but more importantly, it had become known throughout the retail industry for its culture and employee practices. Business journals wrote case studies about Tech Hub's management philosophy. Graduate schools invited Marcus to speak about building sustainable, human-centered businesses. Competitors tried to replicate the model with varying degrees of success. Because, as Marcus often explained, culture isn't a policy you can copy, it's a living thing you have to nurture every single day. The Riverside store remained his favorite location. He visited at least once a month, often unannounced, always willing to work a shift if they were short-staffed or just to stay connected to the reality of retail work. Destiny was now the store manager. Maria had been promoted to regional manager for the entire southern Michigan territory. Destiny's daughter Amara was 9 years old, cancer-free for 3 years, and still the unofficial consultant for the store's unicorn merchandise section, which had become so popular that Marcus had created an entire Amara's Picks line of whimsical tech accessories sold in all Tech Hub locations. Jake had finished nursing school and was working as a pediatric oncology nurse, but he still picked up occasional weekend shifts at Tech Hub because, as he put it, "This place saved me when I needed saving. I want to give back." Ron had retired but came by the store every Saturday for the community workshops, where he taught a wildly popular class called The History of Electronics, from Morse code to TikTok. The store had become a genuine community hub. The workshop space was used 7 days a week for everything from coding classes to senior citizen tech support to a gaming league for local teenagers. Destiny had started a program where local school kids could learn about retail management and customer service, creating a pipeline of trained workers who understood Tech Hub's values from day one. And then there was the impact beyond Riverside. The anonymous reporting system had caught 17 other managers with problematic behaviors across the company, none as severe as Patterson, but all serious enough to require intervention. Some were retrained and improved, others left the company, voluntarily or otherwise. The culture of fear that had infected certain locations was systematically dismantled and replaced with a culture of accountability and support. Employee satisfaction scores across all Tech Hub locations had increased by 47%, turnover had dropped by 52%, customer satisfaction had increased by 38%, and profitability. Despite the significant investment in employee support and benefits, Tech Hub was more profitable than ever. Turns out, happy employees employees create happy customers, which creates sustainable success. Marcus often thought about that anonymous email, those 5 sentences that had set everything in motion. Your Riverside location is rotting from the inside. Your employees are suffering. Management is corrupt. People are crying in your store. Come see for yourself if you care. Come see for yourself if you care. That was the key, wasn't it? Not just caring in theory, not just writing policies and mission statements, but actually showing up, actually looking, actually listening, actually being willing to see the uncomfortable truths and do something about them. On the 3rd anniversary of his undercover visit, Marcus returned to Riverside for a surprise celebration that the employees had planned without his knowledge. He walked in to find the store decorated with balloons and banners. All 40 employees the store had grown were there, along with some former employees, including several who'd been fired or forced out by Patterson and had been rehired with apologies and back pay. Destiny presented him with a gift, a janitor's uniform, freshly pressed, with a name tag that said, Marcus Reed, the boss who cared enough to see the truth. "We wanted you to have this," Destiny said, her voice emotional but strong. "As a reminder that the best leaders don't stay in their offices. They get their hands dirty. They show up. They care enough to see what's really happening." Marcus held the uniform carefully, memories of that day flooding back. The fear, the rage, the heartbreak of watching Destiny cry at her register. The moment of decision when he could have walked away or stayed silent, but chose instead to act. "Thank you," he said simply. "I'll treasure this." Amara bounded up, now a confident 9-year-old with long curly hair and an endless supply of unicorn-themed accessories. "Mr. Reed, I made you something." She handed him a drawing, a store with rainbow windows, surrounded by stick figures holding hands. In the center, in crayon letters, it said, "Tech Hub, where people matter." "It's perfect," Marcus said, throat tight. "Can I hang this in my office? Only if you promise to keep being nice to my mommy and all the other people." "I promise." The celebration was joyful and genuine. There were speeches and laughter and a cake decorated with a cartoon janitor holding a mop in one hand and a CEO briefcase in the other. There were stories shared about how things had changed, how much better people's lives had become, how proud they were to work for Tech Hub. But the moment that stayed with Marcus came at the end of the evening. The store had closed, most employees had left, and he was helping Destiny clean up. Old habits die hard. "Can I ask you something?" Destiny said, wrapping up leftover cake. "Always. Why did you do it? Why didn't you just fire Patterson remotely, send in HR to clean up and move on? Why did you put yourself through working undercover, seeing all that ugliness up close?" Marcus considered the question carefully. "Because leadership isn't something you do from a distance. I needed to understand, really understand what had happened here. I needed to feel what you felt, see what you saw. And I needed to know that I was making the right decisions based on reality, not reports or second-hand information. Most importantly, I needed to reconnect with why I started this company in the first place. And why did you start it? Because my father worked retail for 30 years. He worked for companies that treated him like a disposable part, that squeezed every ounce of productivity out of him and gave nothing back. He died of a heart attack at 53, exhausted and broke despite a lifetime of hard work. I started Tech Hub because I believed it was possible to build a successful business that also honored the dignity and humanity of the people who made it successful. That day, I walked in here and saw you crying. I thought I'd failed that mission, failed my father's memory, failed myself. But you hadn't failed. You'd just lost sight of it temporarily, and you course-corrected. Because someone cared enough to tell me the truth. Because you and Maria and Jake and everyone else were brave enough to speak up in whatever ways you could. That's the real lesson here, Destiny. It's not about one heroic CEO fixing everything. It's about creating a culture where people feel empowered to speak truth to power, where problems can be surfaced and addressed, where everyone takes responsibility for the community we're building together. Destiny smiled, tears in her eyes. "That's what we have now. That's what you helped us build." As Marcus drove home that night, he thought about all the ways his life had changed since that email 3 years ago. He'd learned humility, the hard lesson that success can breed complacency, that you can lose sight of your values while thinking you're upholding them. He'd learned that leadership requires constant vigilance, constant connection, constant willingness to see uncomfortable truths. He'd learned that culture isn't something you create once and forget about. It's something you nurture every single day through thousands of small actions and decisions. But most importantly, he'd learned that people are resilient, capable of extraordinary things when given the support and respect they deserve. Destiny could have been broken by Patterson's abuse, but instead, she'd become stronger, a leader in her own right. The store could have remained toxic, but instead, it had become a model for the entire company. Tech Hub could have stayed mediocre, but instead, it had become exceptional, all because someone sent an anonymous email, all because someone cared enough to look, all because people chose courage over comfort, truth over silence, community over self-interest. Marcus kept that janitor's uniform in his office, hanging on the wall where he could see it every day. It was his reminder to never get so comfortable at the top that he forgot what the view looked like from the bottom, to never get so caught up in numbers and strategy that he forgot the human beings those numbers represented, to always be willing to roll up his sleeves and do the work, whatever it took, because in the end, that's what leadership really is: showing up, seeing clearly, caring deeply, and doing something about it every single day. And that's where our story ends. But the lessons continue. If Marcus's journey taught us anything, it's that real change begins when we're willing to see the truth, even when it's uncomfortable, and act on it with courage and compassion. If this story moved you, if Destiny's courage inspired you, if Marcus's transformation reminded you that one person really can make a difference, then I need you to do something for me. Hit that like button, not just for me, but for every person who's ever felt invisible at work, who's ever cried through a shift, who's ever wondered if speaking up would cost them everything. Subscribe to RealTales if you haven't already, because we're committed to bringing you stories that matter, stories that challenge us, stories that remind us of our shared humanity, and most importantly, share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever worked for a Kevin Patterson? Have you witnessed a Marcus Reed moment of leadership? Have you been a Destiny fighting to hold on while everything felt like it was falling apart? Your story matters. Your experience matters. This community is built on the willingness to share truth, and I'm here to listen. From all of us at RealTales, thank you for being here. Thank you for caring about these stories. Thank you for believing that how we treat each other matters, that leadership means service, and that every person deserves dignity and respect. Until next time, take care of yourself and take care of each other. Because in the end, that's what this whole thing is about.